You remember the weight of a proper coat. Not the papery thing from Primark that barely keeps the rain off. A real coat. Wool-lined, heavy on your shoulders like it meant business. You remember your dad pulling on his Burton jacket on a Saturday morning, the scratch of the new collar against his neck, the smell of cedar and shoe polish in the hallway before the family walked out the door. In the 1970s, Britain did not just get dressed. It dressed with purpose, with pride, and with a quality you could feel in every single stitch. From suits that fathers handed down to sons, to cardigans that survived a decade of Monday washing, clothing was not disposable. It was personal. It said something about who you were and where you came from. This is how a nation dressed, and why we will never dress that way again. If stories like this take you back, you are in the right place. We tell the stories of Britain you actually remember. Hit subscribe so you do not miss the next one, and drop a comment telling us what your family wore. Now back to a Saturday morning in 1975. Picture a high street in any British town. It does not matter which one. Leeds, Nottingham, Bristol, Aberdeen. They all looked the same, and that sameness was a comfort, not a complaint. Burton on the corner, with its dark wood frontage and gold lettering, Marks and Spencer halfway along, the anchor that held the whole street together. C and A on the other side, Littlewoods further down, British home stores next to Woolworths. Dorothy Perkins between a shoe shop called Dulce's and a newsagent that smelled of tobacco and ink. Every town had its own version of the same cast, and every Saturday morning the whole country turned out to walk among them. Dad would be in his sports jacket, brown or grey, worn open over a tank top and a collared shirt. Maybe corduroy trousers with a slight flare, polished shoes, hair combed flat with Brill cream still holding from the morning. Mum would be in her M&S coat, belted at the waist, a handbag over one arm, a shopping list folded in the pocket. That coat had a St. Michael label sewn inside the lining, and she had owned it since 1971, and it still looked brand new. The kids trailed behind. School shoes from Clark's, properly measured by the man with the metal foot gauge. Hand-me-down jumpers patched at the elbows. Maybe a new anorak from C&A if it was nearly winter. Clothing had rules that everybody understood without ever being told. You did not leave the house looking scruffy. You did not wear jeans to a restaurant. A man without a tie in a pub lounge would get a look that said everything. There was Sunday best, and there was everyday. There was the good dress and the everyday dress. There was the suit for weddings and funerals, and it hung in the wardrobe for 30 years because it was built to last that long. A Burton suit was not fashionable. It was furniture. It was part of the household, as permanent as the sideboard. Men owned perhaps 15 garments, and they wore every single one. Women kept a winter coat for a decade, and it still held its shape come March. Kids wore their older brother's trousers until the knees gave out, and then their mum sewed a patch on, and they wore them for another year. Nothing was thrown away because nothing needed to be. The quality would not allow it. And here is what most people never thought about. Behind every garment, on every rail, in every shop, on every high street, there was something enormous, an entire country making the clothes on its own back. Lancashire was cotton. The mills of Blackburn, Bolton, Burnley, Oldham and Preston had been spinning and weaving since the 1700s. By the 1970s, those brick chimneys still lined the valleys, still pumped smoke into grey northern skies, still employed entire families across 3 generations. Yorkshire was wool. The looms of Bradford, Huddersfield, Halifax and Leeds turned raw fleece into the finest worsted cloth in the world. Nottingham was lace and hosiery. Leicester wore knitwear. The Midlands, the North, Scotland. Everywhere you looked, someone was cutting, stitching, pressing, finishing. In 1975, 830,000 people worked in British textiles. That is not a typo. 830,000. Entire towns existed because of a single factory or a single contract. When Marks and Spencer placed an order, it kept a Leicester knitwear mill running for a year. When Burton needed cloth, Yorkshire weavers ran their looms around the clock. And Burton. Let us talk about Burton. Montague Burton was a Lithuanian Jewish immigrant who arrived in Britain in 1900 with nothing but borrowed money and an instinct for quality. He opened his first shop in Chesterfield in 1903, and by the 1920s he had built the largest clothing factory in the world on Hudson Road in Leeds. 10,000 workers on a single site producing 30,000 suits every week. Burton did not just sell clothes. He manufactured them, from raw cloth to finished garment, under one roof with his own trained workforce. During the Second World War, Burton produced uniforms for the armed forces. After the war, his factories made the demob suits given to every returning serviceman. A jacket, trousers, waistcoat, shirt and tie, the full Monty, they called it. By 1945, Burton had clothed roughly a fifth of all British males. And the quality was real. A Burton suit from the 1960s was fully structured, properly canvassed, made from British woven cloth with horn buttons and hand-finished seams. Not Savile Row, but honest. Built to last. A working man could walk into any Burton shop on any high street, be measured by the in-house tailor, choose his cloth, and collect a made-to-measure suit a fortnight later. That service was still available into the early 1970s. A proper suit made for you on the high street at a price an ordinary family could afford. Marks and Spencer took it further. They did not just buy from British factories. They invested in them, sent their own technicians to improve production, funded new machinery, trained workers, built relationships that lasted decades. The St. Michael label, launched in 1928, was a pact between shop and customer. Every single item of clothing in M&S was sourced from Britain. Not 90%, not mostly. Every piece. 1 in 3 British families bought their underwear from M&S. The company accounted for 30% of all clothing exports from the country. This was not just retail. It was national infrastructure. Then the weather changed. 1973. The oil crisis hit. Petrol prices doubled overnight. The government declared a 3-day working week to save electricity. Inflation climbed past 20%. Families who had been comfortable suddenly found themselves staring at rising prices in shop windows, counting coins at the till, choosing between the electricity bill and a new pair of shoes. The comfortable world of the Saturday high street started to wobble. And while ordinary people tightened their belts, cheap imports were flooding through the door. Factories in Hong Kong, South Korea, Taiwan, and later China were producing garments at a fraction of British costs. By 1975, 60% of the British home textile market was taken by foreign imports. In the House of Commons that March, members of Parliament stood up and warned that the industry was dying. 150,000 textile workers were on short notice. 12 mills in Lancashire alone had closed in a matter of months. A member for West Yorkshire reported that 23 textile firms in his constituency had shut down between May and October of that year. 2013 redundancies spread so thinly across so many small towns that nobody raised the alarm. At the same time, fashion itself was in revolt. In 1976, Vivienne Westwood and Malcolm McLaren opened their shop called SEX on the King's Road in London. Punk was not just music. It was a firebomb thrown at every wardrobe in the country. Safety pins instead of cufflinks. Ripped fabric instead of pressed seams. The sacred divide between work clothes and best clothes did not just blur. It was set on fire. Younger people did not want Dad's Burton suit. They wanted destruction, self-expression, and disposability. The old rules of dressing were suddenly embarrassing. But the real destruction did not happen on the King's Road. It happened in the boardrooms. Through the 1980s and into the 90s, one retailer after another looked at the numbers and made the same calculation. British factories were expensive. Skilled workers demanded decent wages. Quality control took time. But a factory in Morocco or Sri Lanka or Bangladesh could make the same garment for a fraction of the cost, so they moved. Burton was among the first. During the late 1970s and early 1980s, most of Burton's factories closed, including the legendary Hudson Road Mills in Leeds. 10,000 jobs gone. The made-to-measure service gone. The in-house tailoring gone. What had been the biggest clothing factory in the world became an empty building and eventually a development site. Marks & Spencer held out the longest, 100% British sourcing right through to 1998. Then, as profits soared past £1.2 billion, the boardroom made its move. Between 1998 and 2001, M&S began abandoning British suppliers who had worked with them for generations. Contracts terminated. Factories closed. Entire towns built around M&S orders left with nothing. And the quality collapsed with it. Those overseas factories were not held to St. Michael's standards. The fabric got thinner. The stitching got looser. The buttons turned from horn to plastic. Jumpers that once lasted 10 years now pilled after one wash. Trousers split at the seams. Shirts lost their shape by the third wearing. Customers noticed. They always notice. Then the high street itself started disappearing. C&A withdrew from Britain in 2000, closing 113 stores and cutting 4,800 jobs. Littlewoods was sold in 2002. Woolworths collapsed in 2009, leaving gaping holes on every high street in the country. British Home Stores went in 2016. Debenhams followed, and in 2021, Burton itself, the company that once clothed the nation, was bought by online retailer Boohoo for pennies. Every single high street store closed. Dorothy Perkins, Wallace, Burton. Pound t-shirt from an online retailer made in a factory in Dhaka where a machinist earns less in a day than you spend on a coffee. Worn twice, photographed once, thrown in a bin bag by the end of the month. In 2013, the Rana Plaza garment factory in Bangladesh collapsed, killing over 1,100 workers who were making clothes for Western brands. The building had been declared unsafe the day before. The workers were sent in anyway. The skills that built British clothing are gone too. The tailors, the cutters, the weavers, the pattern makers, the machinists who could run a seam straighter than a ruled line. A century of knowledge handed from mother to daughter, from foreman to apprentice, wiped out in a single generation. You cannot rebuild what took 100 years to learn. The abandoned mills of Lancashire still stand along the valley floors, converted into flats and fitness studios and artisan coffee shops. Beautiful buildings with nothing left inside them that remembers what they were for. In 1975, a man might own 15 garments and wear every one of them until they wore out. Today, the average wardrobe contains 118 items, and most of them are worn fewer than 10 times. We own more clothes than any generation in history, and care about them less than any generation in history. That is not progress. That is waste, dressed up as choice. So, was the 1970s really better, or are we just remembering wrong? Honestly, the 70s were not perfect. The polyester could melt near a radiator. The brown and orange color schemes should probably answer for their crimes. Flared trousers collected enough rainwater to fill a paddling pool, and that tank top your dad wore to every barbecue was not the fashion triumph he thought it was. But underneath all of that, there was a principle that mattered: quality over quantity. Things made with care, by people who took pride in their work, sold in shops that stood behind what they sold. A coat that lasted a decade. A suit that saw you through every milestone of your adult life. Shoes that were worth resoling because the leather was worth saving. The connection between a loom in Halifax and a wardrobe in Birmingham. Between a tailor's hands and a young man's first proper jacket. Between a mother checking the St. Michael label and knowing, truly knowing, that this cardigan would see her daughter through 3 winters without losing a single button. That is what we lost. Not just clothes, a way of thinking about the things we own. The idea that what you wear carries weight and meaning and a relationship to the hands that made it. Somewhere in a charity shop in England right now, or in a wardrobe that has not been cleared out since your parents downsized, there is a Burton suit from 1974, or an M&S cardigan from 1976, still holding its shape, still wearable, still better made than anything you could buy new today for 10 times the price. Pick it up, feel the weight of it. Run your thumb across the stitching. That is the quality we chose to throw away, and we are never getting it back. Do you remember what your family wore in the 1970s? The Saturday morning high street trip? Your dad's best jacket? Your mum's winter coat? Drop your memories in the comments below. And if this took you back, hit that subscribe button for more stories about the Britain we remember.